Drew Bledsoe is now joining us live. 14 years, four-time Pro Bowler, Patriots Hall of Fame joining us, former #1 overall pick. Yeah, forget all the Bill personal stuff. Is that college football is a lot. It's like the movie poster. What's the movie? Pete Carroll, big energy. Bill Walsh, lower energy academic. How do you think he'll do as a coach?
It's going to be interesting to watch, Colin. And I think if nothing else, it's going to get eyeballs, right? So, I mean, if that's what you're looking for, people are going to be watching, North Carolina football. But you're right. You have to simplify things. You only get a certain amount of time. And then, now coaching in college is so much different too, because not only do you recruit guys coming in, you have to keep recruiting them the entire time you're there. Bill has always been so focused, just one-dimensional on the football. It's going to be really interesting, to see, how he does dealing with all the other stuff that is involved in coaching college now. Yeah,
NIL makes it maybe a little easier because you can just go buy guys. But, he didn't necessarily always work well with young players. The college football thing is interesting. I can remember your college career very well. We talked about this morning, USC Notre Dame, and USC's like, time out. We got to go to Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State. We don't want to go to South Bend in November. My take is tradition entered the portal. Get over it. Like, where are you on like a USC Notre Dame? Would you give that up because now the Big Ten pays you $75, $80 million a year and you don't need the revenue?
Yeah, I'm with you, Colin. I love the tradition. I love these old rivalries, and maybe we're just old. Maybe we just don't get it. But man, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. My dad played for the Washington Huskies, so he was Pac-8, Pac-10, and I was in the Pac-10. My son played for the Cougs in the Pac-12, and so now you got like 3 generations of our family history that's kind of thrown out the door. So it bugs me. I don't like the lack of, or some of these traditions that have been broken down with the realignment.
So in your day, you played 8, 9 high school games. It was slower growth. These days, I'm much tougher on quarterbacks. The 7-on-7 camps, you have your personal coaches. By Thanksgiving of year 2, I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to be in a room, and I know if you can play or you can't play. I'm giving you about 25 games. You were in a different world where you got 3 full years, and then you looked at Eli and said, okay, it works. I look at Caleb Williams. I looked at how good Burrow was quickly. Jaden Daniels was quickly. Andrew Luck was quickly. Lamar Jackson was. When will you watch Caleb with now kind of a stacked roster? When will you have strong opinions on Caleb Williams for the Bears next year?
Yeah, I think this year is going to be pretty telling, Colin, because you come in, one of the curses of being the top draft pick is you're generally going to a team that's not very good unless there's some kind of crazy trade or something, and so now they're putting a roster around him. The guy's remarkably talented. There's no questioning that. But this year it's going to be interesting to watch his progression. And it's also one thing for young quarterbacks is who they're working with on a daily basis, and what kind of coaching are they getting? You see certain coaches, Sean Payton comes to mind. Andy Reid is a guy that's always been that guy. Quarterbacks have success when they're with these guys. And so, it'll be interesting to watch his continued development. This year, he probably gets this year to progress, and then next year, that third year, it's kind of, well, are you going to re-up on this guy, or is he going to move on someplace else?
I found people last year had really strong opinions on his footwork, hero ball. If you just watched him, what was your general impression? I'm not saying things were built for him to succeed, but was there a general uneasiness sometimes when you watched him?
Yeah, it's sometimes that remarkable talent can be a little bit of a curse. I had a big arm, and that got me into some trouble from time to time because, you tend to think you can make every throw. You can fit the ball into the tightest spot. And sometimes, as a quarterback, you just have to take the easy play. You got to take the check down. You got to take 5 yards. You don't have to make the wow play every single time, especially, when that when you're risking, losing a game because you're trying to force something to happen. You watch, Pat Mahomes is probably the best guy playing right now. Best guy's played for quite a while. And you watch him, especially like this last year and the last couple of years. There was not a lot of wow stuff in the first three quarters or first 3.5 quarters.
Right.
And then when he had to, boom, he can make that wow play. But he really seems to understand that quarterback thing where you first do no harm. It's kind of like you're a doctor, right? The Hippocratic Oath, first you do no harm. And that's one thing that a guy like Caleb has to understand is like, look, the wow plays once in a while, yeah, you have to, but the rest of the game, you really need to be able to manage the game and keep it close and keep your team in the game and not lose the game before you have a chance to win it.
You're tied to Robert Kraft in New England. You're in the Patriots Hall of Fame. There's not a lot of players, former players, that go on to be great coaches. Okay, Belichick wasn't, Andy Reid wasn't, McVay was an athlete but wasn't, Kyle Shanahan wasn't. Vrabel was a good player, but he's a hell of a coach. And Dan Campbell, again, was solid, but it really works. What is your insight on what is it about Vrabel that, because I think he's really good, and most guys who played at a high level, they're too busy being players to worry about anything else. What is his secret sauce?
Yeah, I only played with Mike for 1 year, and we were close enough friends. It felt like we played together for like 5 or 6 years. But Mike had then, and I think still to this day, has just tireless energy. He would go to practice and run all of the defensive snaps. Then he would play scout team, and then for just to burn off some energy, he would go run down on scout team kickoff, like just tireless energy. And so you start there. That's something that you see with Dan Campbell too. Just like his energy is infectious. And then Braves is incredibly smart. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy. But I also think Colin, there's something about, being a player that gives you some credibility with your team.
Yeah.
Now, I know it hasn't always translated. But, I remember watching Danny Campbell in training camp telling his guys, like, guys, I don't want to put you in pads. But if I knew there was another way to get you ready to play, we wouldn't do this, I promise. And they know he means it because he was there. He was one of them. He was, he went through 2-a-days. He knows how much it sucks. And, so I do think that if you have the energy, the intelligence, if you combine that with the credibility that goes with having actually been there and done that and knowing how it feels, I think that's really meaningful to players.
Go back to all your quarterback coaches and your coordinators. Who was the best former player that you had as a coach in your career?
Oh, you know what? I had 8 different offensive coordinators, and probably 9 different quarterback coaches.
Wow.
The one that I really wish I only got to work with him for 1 year. I really wish I could have worked with Sean Payton more. He was an artist when it came to calling plays. He really understood the game. And the great coordinators and quarterback coaches, and it's really important. It was still important to me, and I was in my 13th year or whatever. But they make things more simple for you. They don't overload you with too much information. They're able to take, really complex things and make them simple for you. And that's, what I hope that is going to happen for Drake May in New England, with the other Josh McDaniels. Our winemaker is Josh McDaniels, but it's not the same guy. So we always call him the other Josh McDaniels, but the other Josh McDaniels working with Drake May, I really believe that he'll have the ability to help Drake simplify things, going into this next season, and then to kind of bring him along slowly as he continues to progress and can process more. But I'm really excited to watch that happen.
And finally, I think Shadur will be fine. I think he was underdrafted, but there aren't a lot of traits. He doesn't spin it like you. He's not as tall as you. He doesn't move like Lamar. He doesn't have a lot you go, wow, but I do think he didn't have a good O-line or a run game, and he played really well against much better teams. And I think there's value in playing well. When you watch him, and you watch them a little bit at Colorado, if you'd never heard any other analysts talk about Shedeur Sanders, when you watched him play as a former NFL pick, what did you see that you liked or didn't? Did you think he was a first-round player?
Yeah, I did. I did, Colin. I thought he was first round talent. I don't know the guy. I still, it's sort of a mystery to me why he fell as far as he did. But when I watch him, he's accurate. He throws with anticipation. There's a quarterback thing that I always look for if I'm watching quarterbacks. Um, the ones that are successful, you can almost see the future, right? You have to be able to anticipate. You have to throw guys open. If you wait to see a guy open, especially as you rise to the NFL level, then you're behind and you're just not going to be successful. And I've watched that happen with some quarterbacks that had really big arm talent, but they had to wait to see somebody open before they throw the ball. Shadur seems to be able to anticipate well. I liked watching him play in college. Again, he didn't have a ton, of help up front. He was getting hit. It's another thing that I look for. I'm always kind of suspicious when you see some of these, not always, but some of these quarterbacks that come out of the great programs, the Ohio States and Alabamas of the world, because they're out there. Their guys are better than the other guys. They're not getting hit. They're throwing to open guys. Most guys should be able to do that. But when you watch a guy that's getting hit repeatedly and still popping up and making the plays for you, that's something that is a quality that's hard to learn if you can learn it. And he got his ass knocked off in college and still continued to battle and play well. So, so I believe he's going to have some success, at some point, whether it's this year, next year, whenever that happens.
Yeah, I will tell you, when I watched Jared Goff at Cal, never got hurt, and he got blistered for 3-4 years. And I was like, I don't know if he's any good, but that skinny kid never gets hurt. Some guys just bounce back. Eli Manning never got hurt. It's just the way it works.
Yeah, no, the best ability is availability, right? That's what the old saying. And and it's not just the durability piece, but it's the mental toughness of knowing that you're going to get hit the next play, but still standing in there and delivering the ball and doing that over and over again. That's a hard thing to learn. It really is a hard thing to learn. I don't know if you can learn it. And Shadur seems to have that ability to take his hits and keep battling.
Okay, Doubleback Winery. Check it out, Doubleback Winery. Was it a good year, as they ask in your industry?
It's a great vintage, Colin. Great vintage. Mother Nature was very, very kind to us. The critics have been really kind to us as well, which is good. Critics, I've always viewed wine critics kind of like sports writers. I want to put a lot of them in a bag and beat them with a stick. But every once in a while they're nice to us. They gave us, we've gotten a couple 100-point scores recently. So now I love the critics because they're giving us some nice ratings on the wines.
Look it up, Doubleback Winery, Drew Bledsoe. It's great to see you as always, Drew.
Yeah, man, it's been too long, Colin. Good to see you again, buddy.